And a quick reminder, make sure everyone has their mics on and speak clearly into the mics with our masks on to make sure that everyone in the public and on the video stream can hear us.
Okay, hang on here. I was in the middle of a different folder. Espino.
Here.
And that doesn't work. Oh. Hang on, I'm coming. All right, we'll do red. Okay, I don't have a black one. Okay. All right. Yan, Espino.
Here.
Lang.
Here.
Mencia.
Here.
Petrielli here. Reed.
Here.
Sager.
Present.
And Schumacher.
Present.
And we're all present at 6:01.
Okay, can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, item 4.0 on the agenda is presentations. As we have no presentations, we'll move on to agenda item 5.0, comments and suggestions from the public. Is there anyone coming here to speak to the board tonight? Okay, since we have no one speaking here to the board, I won't go through my long list of things to read beforehand. Are you here to speak to the board? Yes, ma'am. There's a sign-in sheet back there. Can you?
And Randy, just a quick comment that now that the board has reopened the meetings and public comments are done in person, I do want to express that we've received several messages from the public that they explicitly stated were not intended for public comment, but wanted to express and share information for the board. And Randy's been doing a great job of forwarding those on to all of us, and we are reading those and considering those. So we appreciate the emails that have come in from the community.
Do you need me to take time, Randy?
What?
Do you need me to be the timer?
Yes, please. If you'd like to come up and speak, we're at this point in the meeting. We're doing public comments right now. Come on up, please. So while you're coming up, I just want to let you know that,
You can come out.
as a reminder, this meeting is being videotaped, live streamed on YouTube. The video of the meeting will also be archived and available for viewing after the meeting has adjourned. For those sharing a public comment, please be mindful that you are being broadcast live and your comment will also be included in the video archive. So you'll have 3 minutes. The time he'll be taking the time, he'll give you a 30-second warning.
Okay. Cool. Hello. Good evening. My name is Megan Taylor. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Hold it up. Okay.
We'll start over the time.
Thank you. Like I said, my name is Megan Taylor. My 2 kids were both born at a Lexington hospital in 2005, 2008. I have a child that goes to Friendship Junior High, and I also have a daughter in the high school. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to speak to you guys tonight. But I just wanted to ask you a couple questions. Can you tell that I'm happy to be here? Do you think I'm lonely or depressed? You honestly have no idea because of this face mask I have on my face. How are we supposed to teach? How are the teachers supposed to teach the kids if the teachers can't understand? The kids can't understand what their teachers are saying. They say that your expression, facial expression, counts for 7% vocal and over 83% facial. How are the teachers supposed to help our kids if they can't understand, if the kids understand the material. I know the governor came out with his mandates, but they are just mandates. They are not laws. We all know this. We've been dealing with this for the past 16 months. I think now is the time for the change. All summer long, my kids have been unmasked. Outside, inside, my daughter plays on a travel basketball team. Unmasked inside. There were no cases. Absolutely zero. Why are we continuing to mask our children? It makes no sense whatsoever. I have tried. My kids have tried. We've been dealing with this for a long time now. But us as parents, we deserve to have that right to do what is best for our child. We do not co-parent with the state or the school. These are our children. You cannot force my child to wear a mask while they are in school.
30 seconds.
Thank you. I'm done.
Has anyone else come to speak before the board? Okay, we're going to move into discussion item 6.0, discussion of water bottle filter stations.
Thank you. So with COVID-19 and what we've seen, the operations team has looked at different measures to improve hygiene in the district's buildings. And so we've looked at any sort of hands-free approaches. So here's an example, which are these water bottle filler stations. They fulfill the hands-free option. There are sensors that activate the running water. There is equipment that can be installed by our staff. It will convert our current layouts. We do have funding out of capital projects, and even the ESSER $3 can be used for this. So thank you to Mr. Tiarina. We talked to 3 different companies because we got to see that these were conversion kits from our current pieces. And we did find that Ferguson did have a lower cost than the rest to convert all of our water bottle filter stations across the district. That being said, it would be pretty straightforward for us to also have any sort of recyclable cups or whatnot for classes, so that if kids do need water, we can at least have that in the meantime, and or have the ability for children to bring their own water bottles so that they can fulfill that up and be ready in the class if need be. So this is the information that we want to provide because we do want safe environments for our children.
Question for you, Ron. So right now, looking at we're looking at the Ferguson column. That's going to be the total cost, $47,000 to swap out and switch all existing water fountains.
That is correct.
Okay.
And Ron, for those filler stations that already exist at schools, are those hands-free or are they not? And so we're switching the existing filler stations to these.
Those are 2.
Okay.
So we're not necessarily flipping those out. It's just the ones that we have not been able to use ever since we've seen with COVID.
Awesome. And is there any ongoing cost for the filter component of this?
Yes, that is correct. But we do have to do filters anyways for any water station.
Mm-hmm. And maybe a question for Dr. Bresnahan. Currently, are we aware of are there rules against kids having the water bottles that we know of at their desks, during the day? Anything against that, or is that still kind of open and allowed?
No, unless there's an individual school situation, but not that I would be aware of that, we absolutely want our kids to be well hydrated during the day, and it seems to be a very common practice across districts.
I kind of think it'd be encouraged to bring your own water bottle to school. My question would be the time frame of this installation. How long will it take to get this done, and do we have a, was it something that can be done during the day? Because if it's our staff doing it, can we have our staff in there during the day doing it, or will it have to be done at night when the kids are not in class?
Our staff can do it during the day. The water stations that are currently not, that these would replace, are not being used at this time. So they would be easy to replace during that time. Now, how long it would take, I'd have to ask Mr. Tiarina about that. I don't want to put a time frame on his staff.
And then I just had one question, which was practical, which is when we have visitors, do we supply paper cups? How's that handled?
I know a lot of districts do use the water bottles. They ask if they want water or not like that.
How many stations are we having done? What's the total?
57.
57?
And you said there were sensors too, right? I guess I'm thinking more of accessibility issues if any of the students would.
There are sensors. Unfortunately, right now, with some of our hallways, we probably have only, in some of the buildings, maybe one running water bottle filter station, and this could alleviate all those problems.
Okay.
Did we say how fast this can be done, Ron?
It could be done relatively quickly, but I just don't want to put down that time frame on Albert's team and then hold them to some sort of time frame that is unrealistic, because I'm not as versed on that as. But I know it's not going to take the entire year. It's not like one of those
Okay.
projects. It's
I love that we're doing it. I just, the faster the better.
sure.
And do we know, you mentioned that the federal COVID dollars that we receive would be paying some of this, or all of it, or part of it?
It can. I mean, in the initial budget, we had it under the Capital Projects Fund, which is a 60 fund. However, ESSER 3, which would be perfect for one-time expenses, and this is a Dr. Bresnahan idea, so I'm going to give her the credit for it. It would be no problem for us to use ESSER 3 on it.
Okay.
I mean, it's not something we would be doing if it wasn't for COVID, so it should probably come out of that fund.
I know that some buildings have raised money, their PTOs have paid for them, so I really think we need to stop having to do that kind of thing, and we should put them in. I mean, it's so many buildings
I
that,
agree, we should.
yeah,
I
so many
agree.
buildings have them now that
Mhm.
it just makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's a one-shot deal.
I'm just,
Yeah, I know.
whose pocket are we picking?
I gotcha.
Are there questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to consent agenda, item 7.0. Can I make a motion, someone make a motion to approve the,
This is Courtney. I can make the motion. Be it resolved that on the 9th day of August 2021, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented and amended. 7.01, approval of minutes prior meetings. 7.02, disbursements resolution. And 7.03, acceptance of financial reports. 7.04, acceptance of recommendations, human resources report. And 7.05, approval to destroy 18-month or older closed session recordings.
I'll second it.
do you have any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Sager,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Spino,
Aye.
and the motion passes.
Next item on our agenda is the action items, item 8.0. Do I have a motion for the
Oh.
approval?
I'll make the motion, Randy. Whereas the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education wishes to renew its purpose, roles, standards, agreements, and protocols. Now therefore be it resolved on the 9th day of August 2021, the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 59 approves the revised board working agreement document linked to this resolution.
I'll second it.
Just a quick comment. I wanted to thank Cindy for making all of the revisions to this agreement, as well as to the social media document that's internally linked. And also just to thank Dr. Bresnahan, because I feel like we had a really productive conversation at our board self-evaluation where we went through this in detail and we were able, with Dr. Bresnahan's presence a few days even before her official start, to set expectations about communication and just revisit all of our policies. And so these were really relatively minor updates, but I think going forward, we're all on the same page about our protocols and how we'll share information with each other.
I would like just to add that once this is approved, it will be put on the district website for everyone to be able to read it if they would like to read it, including an internal link about social media. Roll call, please.
Mencia?
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed?
Aye.
Sager?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Espino?
Aye.
And Lang.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Can I have a motion for item 8.02? All right.
I'll make the motion. Whereas the District 59 Board of Education, in an effort to provide the necessary support and assistance for students, has made consistent use of the North Cook Young Adult Academy as an alternative learning site during the past several school years, and whereas the Academy has asked the district to renew the intergovernmental agreement for the 2021-22 school year, now therefore be it resolved that on this 9th day of August 2021, the School District 59 Board of Education hereby enters into the attached intergovernmental agreement for the 2021-22 school year with North Cook Intermediate Service Center in accordance with the terms identified in the agreement.
I'll second Patty's Courtney.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Petrielli, aye. Reed?
Aye.
Sager?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Espino?
Aye.
Lang?
Aye.
And Mencia.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Can we have a motion for action item 8.03, approval of the library grant?
I'll do it. Be it resolved that on the 9th day of August 2021, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education approves the release of library grant funds in the amount of $779.36.
I'll second it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
We're released to where? What are we doing with this one?
Sorry, I'm over here. Sorry. So it's for the it's through the state. So it's a school library grant. It'll go towards where Miss DeVito is, which is Grove.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Ready?
Roll call, please.
Reed?
Aye.
Sager?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Espino?
Aye.
Lang? Mencia?
Aye.
And Petrielli. Aye. And the motion passes.
Action item 8.04, adoption of the budget. I'll take that one. I'll make the motion. Whereas the Board of Education of Community College Consolidated School District 59 of Cook County, Illinois has caused to be prepared in a tentative form of budget for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2021, and the Secretary of this board has made the same conveniently available for public inspection for at least 30 days prior to action thereon, and whereas due notice that said tentative budget was available for public inspection has been given in full compliance with the law, and whereas a public hearing was held as to such budget on the 2nd day of August 2021. Notice of said hearing have been given at least 30 days prior hereto as required by law, and all the legal requirements complied with. And be it resolved that on the 9th day of August 2021, the Community Consolidated School District Board of Education does authorize Section 1 and Section 2 that the budget shall be declared on the first day of July, and that the copy is inserted in the official meeting minutes of this meeting.
Ready?
Yeah, do we have a second?
I'll second it, Randy.
Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Sager?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Espino?
Aye.
Lang?
Aye.
Mencia?
Aye.
Petrielli. Aye. And Reed.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right, cruising right along. Special interest topics, FOIA requests. Here's Ross, you're up.
Good evening. Since the last report to the Board of Education, we have received 2 FOIA requests. One has been returned and responded to appropriately. The other request is still in progress. I will report out on that next month.
Thank you, Ross. Items 10.0, new and continuing business and announcements. Does anybody have anything? I do have one thing for Ben. Welcome back.
Thank you.
There's been I saw some district updates in the weekly update that came out on Friday. Normally I get those in via email, like when they go out, and I haven't received those lately. Can you look into that?
So can you describe that again?
Like the weekly like there's some updates, like Terry sends up some staff updates and stuff like that. Normally you get those in an email, do a district update, and I have not seen anything like that.
Talking about the Friday weekly update email? Is that what
Yeah.
you're
It was
Yeah.
attached to weekly updates,
Yeah.
and I saw it there, but I normally get an email as well too.
This week starts that, so over the summer, we don't do the staff weekly update, just because obviously staff are off, so we start, this week will be the first one where we begin that again. You'll see that come out on Friday, so all of those, and that's exactly the purpose of that, if I'm understanding the piece correctly, that we try to consolidate all those so they aren't all these one-off pieces. They all go together into one email for staff, and the board receives that as well, and those will start coming out again this Friday and run through the duration of the school year. So look for that this Friday, and that'll come out.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Ben also. Ben, now that you're back, and I'm so glad you are.
Thank you.
Do you think maybe we should have a communications committee meeting one of these days soon?
Yes, we have one scheduled for August 25th.
August
So-
25th?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
So I'll send out a reminder with additional information. I actually have that in my notes, so that'll be coming out this week.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we'll move on. If there's nothing else, we'll move on reports to the Board of Education. Does
Mhm.
anybody have a report from the Board of Education?
I do. I have 2 things. This weekend, Friday and Saturday, I visited the back-to-school events at John Jay, and also Saturday morning at Blackhawk Mobile Park. They were great. A lot of the SLT and the folks that are here in this room were there. Thank you very much for all the hard work that you did. The kids loved it. The parents loved it. I do want to give a tip of the hat here to Marlon Sr. and Melissa Tejeda, who were great in just interacting with the parents, running back and forth, making everybody feel really at home. Saturday, I was talking to a lot of the parents that were there, and I was getting a lot of comments that they were really happy that we were there. So I think that's kind of one of the things that I want to really emphasize is that the going where they are, because we could give out backpacks here in this room and how many would show up, but really being there, and it was really great. So that was the first. The second, I before the meeting today, I ran and stopped by at the Salt Creek PTO had an event at their school. I was going to get dinner, which was a ice cream food truck, but unfortunately the food truck did not come due to the weather. But I do come bringing gifts from the PTO. The Salt Creek PTO wanted me to pass out some magnets to the board here, so I have some that on behalf of the Salt Creek PTO. So thank you very much for them and all the hard work that they do. And that's all I have.
Did you all get the email about the meeting at Café La Cave on September 24th? I believe it was Ed read. And the meetings have been at Café La Cave in Des Plaines for a long, long time, but usually they're an evening meeting. This time it's a daytime meeting. It's from 1:30 to 3. So I hope that everybody who is available during the day, and I know some of you are working and you can't come, but anybody who is available should definitely come because EdRed is really a very wonderful organization. And that's September 24th at 1:30. And we
I
have
think if
to-
you want to go, make sure you let Cindy know so she can register us.
Pardon me?
Make sure you let Cindy know so she can register you for the event.
I can't understand you.
Let Cindy know
Oh, let Cindy know, yes.
so she can
By all
register
means,
you for
because
it.
she'll have to reply for all of us.
Yes. I kind of want to echo what Robert said. It was amazing to see how many backpacks and school supplies have been donated by the community. I mean, it was amazing. I think every student that showed up was able to receive a backpack and supplies. There was also books for these kids to pick up to read if they wanted a book to read, which was really impressive. And you forgot to mention Ashley Robertson, who did most of the organizing of the thing. But they had different stations. They had Harper College there. They had Officer Friendly made it there. There were a lot of tables represented the one on Friday. I'm not sure about the one on Saturday, but even Meade Junior High was there and stuff. So it was really impressive. And I want to hopefully continue that in future years. And I think I'll add one more thing. I talked to Ron, and our 3 secured entrances are finalized and finished, and we are good to go in those 3 buildings. It was kind of getting close, and there was some weekend work involved, I believe, for the last couple weekends to get it done. But it's pretty amazing that, I originally thought when this whole process, it's 10 weeks, shouldn't be any problem to get it done. And then I started thinking about all the logistics and everything like that. It's a pretty compressed time frame to get that work done. So thank you, Ron, and your staff, Nicholas and Archon, for stepping up and getting it all done. I appreciate it. Awesome. And now all our schools have a secured entrance, and we can feel safe that we have provided extra security for our students and staff.
Makes me feel much better.
Since there are no more reports to the Board of Education, we'll go to 12.0 Superintendent Reports.
All right, so I'm going to invite Susan Savage up. She kind of is not necessarily the person who was in charge of our summer programming, but she was very willing to come and share some highlights of our summer programming that took place this year. So excited to be able to share this with you.
Thank you. Yes, it was very exciting to share. During that very atypical year that we were experiencing last year, when instructors started to plan for summer school, they were looking for an opportunity that would provide students continued learning and a lot of flexibility regardless of what the situation would be. So I'm going to share some of the highlights today. So summer school last summer was remote summer school, with some exceptions which we will talk about. It included our 1st through 8th graders, and the goal, as I said, was really to provide that continued intervention and direct instruction for students with what they needed. So we really looked at students in the school settings that were already receiving interventions and looking at what we could do to continue that through the summer. So we had daily literacy, math, or language options. So the school sites physically picked, based on the student's highest need, the area that they would focus on for summer school. That was done through our MTSS process. Oh, sorry, it's not on. Oh, thank you. It's a different one. And summer school took place between June 14th and July 8th. 15 days, and it was over the 4th of July, so about 4 weeks of summer school, between 9 a.m. and 12 every day. So that was the general idea. So
National Weather Service, tornado warning in the area until 7:30 p.m. Take shelter now in a basement or in an interior room.
What area is it in?
I'm assuming, let me make sure that it is in fact here, sorry. Anyone else pulling theirs up?
Do you know? No.
Yeah, let me just make sure that it's, tornado watch, Elk Grove Village, until 10, it's my phone, so I want to make sure this isn't like going to my home location. I assume it's going here, but is anyone else receiving this?
I've got the heavy rains right now, but.
Okay, did you also get a tornado watch?
Watch, not warning.
Warning, okay. So until others get it, I am going to hope that my family is safe where they are, because that is, I think, what that's pulling from. And we'll continue to monitor. Thank you. Sorry,
Okay.
Susan.
Yeah, no problem. Safety first. All right, so summer school. We had some options for families. We had virtual tutoring. The majority was small group instruction to continue their interventions during the summer. And we also offered literacy and math take-home kits. So that was for families who were like, you know what, I don't really want to do that remote learning, but I really would like some activities to work on with my students that are targeted to their age and what they need. So every school had a little preparation to do. So they had a summer school liaison was at the building, and they coordinated which students would need it, and then they opened it up to the families and offered up summer school for those families. And it was quite broad. We really cast a very wide net to see if we could get as many students as possible. The district team then helped coordinate the teaching assignments across the school buildings. And I think a big highlight that I think was a great success from some of the feedback we got was that the students were staying in their peer groups from the school year. And a challenging school year that was that comfort of logging in with maybe not necessarily their teacher, but it was a group of students from their school that they knew. So that was a positive that we tried to kind of keep that piece going during summer school. So in general, for the small group intervention, where it was 375 students that participated, 10 students actually participated in person, which was called supervised remote learning on site at Rupley. And those students were in person because they had very serious issues with connectivity. And so we identified who those students were, and they were able to do that in person. There was 93 teachers of summer school and 2 in-person staff members for that small group to supervise those students. And the sizes was 1 to 4 students in every intervention group approximately. We also continued virtual tutoring. Virtual tutoring was an intervention option that we began during the school year, and we just continued that option for families that wanted to continue it during the summer. So students who are already receiving it, but could not make an intervention time slot work, and they wanted something with more flexibility because the virtual tutors were often able to meet evening, Saturday mornings, that kind of thing, then they stuck with that option. So that was 16 students that decided to stay with virtual tutoring. And then the take-home packs. So the take-home packs were, every parent had the opportunity to request a summer take-home kit in literacy and or math. And in total, we had 1,385 students request and receive take-home kits. And pretty much, they had an option to receive one or the other, and most ended up requesting both, and then they had both kits. Extra kits were also sent to the schools, and then the schools identified families that they think might want them. Maybe they missed the information, and then we sent those home as well. So a lot of kits went home with other students that the school staff looked at through MTSS and said, would you like some of this summer work? So here's a couple of slides so you can see what was in those take-home kits. What was that?
Okay. Just for the audience, we're pausing just to check if the sirens are going off. Yeah, I hear it. Okay.
Looks like we're going to go into recess until we get it all clear. Hope to see everyone soon. Good evening, everyone. In the terms of time savings, we are going to adjourn ourselves into closed session and go to a room to do our closed session meeting, and we will come back and finish the presentation. And about that time, hopefully the tornado warning will be done by then. So can I have a motion to move into closed session?
I move that we go into closed session for the discussion of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act. 5 Illinois Statutes 120-2C1.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Schumacher.
Aye.
Espino.
Aye.
Lang.
Aye.
Mencia.
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed.
Aye.
And Sager.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
And we'll be back when we're out of closed session, this tornado warning's over with. Thank you, everyone. Okay, good evening, everyone. It is now 7:25. The warning has now been changed to a thunderstorm warning, so we have now reconvened the meeting. So now we are back to our summer school update. Are you ready to begin?
Yes, thank you. So where I left off, I was sharing a couple of slides. You could see for your reference the kind of packets that went home. We were talking about the various types of summer school options. One was the packets. This is the literacy packet that had quite a few activities, books for the kids, and then the next slide shows our math packets as well. There was a K-5 and then a 6-7 kits that went home with hands-on as well as activities for the students to work on. And last summer, I should say, for summer school, the approach was that the teachers who were teaching it were going to provide a report, because it was building-based and based mostly on small group intervention, that could then be used at the building level. So I included a couple of examples just so that you could see how progress was being reported for those students. And here's an example of a literacy report where it talks about the learning targets that were addressed during summer school and then general literacy comments. So those are all in a folder. So when the buildings are back, and now the teachers are back, when they begin to do their work at the MTSS process, they can pull those reports and they can take a look at how the students who were in summer school did and what kind of skills they worked on. So they can kind of move forward with that. This is an example from a junior high math one. Very, very similar, just the targets that were addressed and how the student did. And just in general, there was some feedback. There was a survey sent to families. We had 27 responses, which is a smaller number considering the number of students that participated. But of those responses, the students enjoyed it. They felt their students benefit from it, and they felt they would send their child again. And then the staff, there was just 100% felt that the orientation session and communication to prepare for instruction was sufficient, given that it was sort of a different approach. And Brandy Boyd was supervising, as well as Nicole Robinson and Jennifer Browning at the extended school year. So they were all very responsive to the staff. I'll talk a little bit about extended school year. So that's a different part of summer school. That is for pre-K through 7th grade students. And that is for students to make sure that they're maintaining skills and not losing progress that they're making on their academic, social, physical, speech, or occupational goals. They're for students who are eligible for special education services and meet the extended school year criteria. There are 3 programs that are included: the educational life skills, the learning opportunities program, as well as students who are receiving instructional resource IEP minutes. That is a general thematic approach to learning skills and concepts within that program during the summer, trying to make it hands-on with themes, for example, topics like cooking, and they could address reading, writing, speaking, and listening through thematic concepts. So there were 131 students who qualified, 21 teachers, and related services as well. So speech and language pathologist, school psychologist, social worker, occupational therapist, and physical therapist, and support staff. So those students would receive push-in services from the related staff members during their instruction during the extended school year time. I think that's it. So I think that's our summer school report. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to.
I have one question. If a child or some of our students were already at a deficit before summer school and they went through summer school and they still have that deficit, are these reports the way that the teacher can see where they're at and what they need to do for those students?
Yes, the teachers can see the skills that were addressed during the summer, but we're also going to have our fall benchmarking data, so they can use that immediately and they can compare that to the progress report from summer school.
And who sees those packets that just went home with the parents? I mean, that didn't go.
Oh, those packets just go home for the parents. They don't come back to school. So they're more for discovery learning, enrichment, extra support. So those weren't returned.
Oh, okay.
No, those were more of a sort of a family choice that they wanted their students to stay engaged, but it wasn't necessarily for correction.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
The ESY program, was that a full 4 week, was that a longer period than just the 4 weeks?
I think it was the 4 weeks. I think it was the exact same 4 weeks. I'm looking at Katie. I think it was the same. I was just looking at the calendar earlier today, in the same time frame as well.
And that was at Rupley as well, too?
Yes. Yep.
Did we see an increase or decrease generally in the numbers of summer school from that first summer in March when the pandemic started, this one, or was it kind of on par with what we usually see? As far as
That,
the students.
yeah, so in terms of the number
Yeah.
pending from last year,
Mhm.
I don't have that information, so I would have to take a look and see.
Just wondering.
Very different kinds of programming, but it is a great question. I was actually thinking that as well. What does it look like these last few years with all of the atypical schooling that we've had? But I could look for that as well if you ever wanted to see that.
Yeah, and I had a similar question. So this year, we ran into some limitations with our ability to get students into the building, that sort of thing. What can we improve on next year? So we're gonna have this year where we're trying to catch everybody up. It seems like this then, next summer is our chance to really build on the school year.
Right. I've actually been having some conversations with Dr. Bresnahan about looking at summer school in general. What is the purpose? What are the high impact areas that we could focus on? And as we look at how school year is beginning and looking at our data, we can begin to think about what might be the best programming for next school year and really kind of taking a close look at that. It's looked very different every year for a number of years, even pre-COVID, kind of trying different things out. And so I think this might be a good year to revisit that. And summer school planning typically starts, late fall, so it's something to start thinking about.
That's why I'm asking now,
Yeah.
because now it's fresh in our head how
Yes.
this went.
Yeah.
What can we do? How can we extend it to more students? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I think,
Obviously, this year was a scaled-down program relative to previous years. And then for the take-home kits, as a parent, I didn't find them particularly useful because largely I didn't feel like I had a plan with my student, right? And so I would love to see us at the end of next year tell everybody, here's what your student needs to work on over the summer. Here's some goals to maybe try and work through. I would love to see stuff like that, where we can get that's how to get the families involved, because I feel like if you just give them a packet, they don't necessarily know where they're supposed to go with that.
Yeah, Joe, I would second that thought because both my kids did receive the take-home packets. And I think the other piece would be maybe having a little bit of continuity connection with the teacher of here's the areas to focus on with your student is these, here's what would benefit them as next steps. I think having that directive from the teacher too would be motivating to the students.
yeah, something connected. That makes sense. Thank you, for the feedback. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about the delay.
Thank you. One of the impacts I know that were a big part of the planning for last summer, from what I've heard, is also the ability to staff. I think after the year that we had, it was challenging to ask staff to continue to teach in a remote fashion. So I'm hoping that next summer we will have had such a positive year that hopefully we'll get some more participation from our
And that's
our
part of
staff
what I
as
was
well.
getting at, is this summer, I know everyone in education was burnt out. And SSEO had difficulty staffing their extended school year. Other districts in the area have had similar issues, and just teachers didn't want to, they needed a break. And so I feel like if we have a really good school year this year, next year is the time where we can really get some improvements.
Absolutely. Okay, so ready to move on to our conversation around strategic planning. So as we had talked about previously in our July board meeting, we're prepping for our first strategic plan committee meeting, which will be happening on Wednesday. And what we wanted the opportunity to do was for the board to really think and review the current plan, have questions that they might have for us to consider and to bring to the committee. But also what I wanted our SLT members to do was to really talk about how these goals are really reflective of what our day-to-day work looks like here in District 59. So when I've, kind of had the opportunity now to really dig in and look at these, many of these are already in progress based on the goals and the work that we are already doing. So what I thought would be helpful is for our SLT team to kind of just speak very briefly. This isn't going to be an in-depth strategic planning discussion. This isn't really going to be a Q&A, but more an opportunity to listen and hear where we currently are. And then any input or questions that you have that we can take then to the committee process. And then we plan on having, remember, that committee of the whole later on, I believe in September. That will be the time where we will really go in depth with the board around the strategic plan. So I just want to set some clear expectations for tonight. And all those great, in-depth conversations that you want to have, please make sure that we get them to our committee members. That will be Dr. Sager and Ms. Lang. So thank you to both of them. They will be at our committee on Wednesday, but also an opportunity for our SLT to really highlight some of the things that they are currently working on that are really well in alignment with our current strategic plan. So goal number 1 is student growth and achievement. I think part of what Susan just really spoke to addresses that. But Susan, is there anything you would like to speak on? Especially, I'm looking at our readiness, our curriculum clarity, and some of our early learning goals as well.
Yes, I think I can jump in, and at the curriculum clarity bullet point is an area where there has been extensive and ongoing work for the last year and a half. So we have been identifying, building out scope and sequences in literacy, in math, in science, and social science across all levels to include essential learning targets and secondary targets. In addition to that, looking at the work that we're doing with the illustrative math adoption and making sure that we have a curriculum review cycle that is aligning well and that we're finding great resources that can help the staff and the students have access to those learning standards with a lot of supplemental materials as well as the universal ones that we're adopting. So IM has been a great addition because it has allowed staff to really see the connection between our scope and sequence and all of the resources that are within that universal curricular resource. So that piece has been big, as well as the K2 foundational skills, which I talked about a little bit with acceleration of learning. I think identifying gaps and areas for growth, looking at our iReady assessments overall and looking at where we have some gaps and areas for growth in our assessment system is something that we've been looking at and moving forward on. Formative assessment being an area that is one of the best practice, most important areas for teachers to be using, and looking at how we can align curricular resources so that they don't have to create all of their formative assessments, but they have many available to them. And then larger benchmarking data with iReady Math and iReady Reading to start the school year, which drives our MTSS process at the building level. So that, in terms of curriculum clarity, kind of aligning with readiness, achievement, and proficiency growth would be the top things that I would say have been ongoing for the last year and a half.
Thanks, Susan. Tom, would you like to share anything related to assessment?
Just to echo many of the things Susan has shared. We spent a lot of our time in the spring trying to understand that IM platform, especially on the formative side. Our study has really shown we lean more on the summative when we collect assessment data. So really that shift to formative and honestly just getting into IM and using it and understanding it and moving it forward. The iReady piece, as we add reading to the platform, last year it was math, really provides a more system view, that accelerated piece. A great part of the iReady platform is the individual student learning plan. So students, once they take the diagnostic, they receive back a path of work where they have to go, where they can make up some of those skills they might be missing or extend things beyond. So we've talked a lot about that. One big part of this, we've been meeting as an assessment team, an instruction team, an MTSS team, a student services team, really on a weekly basis to build these plans together and really strategizing towards what are those targets, how do we assess them, and then probably that biggest piece, how do we monitor it? So if and maybe when it's not working, we can shift and our practice, instead of saying, well, we have to wait for the winter benchmark or the spring benchmark, that we can do it on the run, in a sense. So we're excited to begin that process and start moving it forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. So our goal area number 2, and
Can I
hopefully...
ask a question, goal 1 first? Just a quick one. On the Friday weekly update, you mentioned the literary curricular resource review and the dual language audit. Is that going to fall into the goal 1, or is that going to fall into somewhere else?
Yes, no, that's absolutely under goal 1 when we talk about curriculum clarity. Starting with those audits of our current programs is really a key piece. So we will be bringing back more information tonight. Actually, I think we're going to talk about a little our ELA audit, and then I know we're going to be bringing back for the board's approval, I believe, next month for our dual language audit as well.
I'd just like to say, over all the years, I have seen a lot of strategic plans, and most of them are very similar. There's not an awful lot of difference. I think the main thing to me is I want a plan that's laudable, something that you can really look at and say, this is terrific. But if it's not doable, then it's just pie in the sky. So it's got to be a plan that's doable besides being something that we want to have.
Yes, and I think after we finish around the 4 goal areas, that's really what we want to start getting our committee to, is how do we operationalize and monitor our progress of this plan. That's the key next step, so that this plan actually comes to life and you can see how all of the work that we do on a daily basis fits within the goals of the board. So I'm going to go to goal 2, inclusive learning environment. That's really talking about our MTSS, our SEL, and I'll turn it to Dr. Ossel for a few highlights on that.
Thank you. Goal 1 and Goal 2 work very closely together because, as you heard with curriculum clarity and the aligned assessment system, Goal 2 is really about the multi-tiered system of supporting that work. So we have to have the structures and the systems in place to utilize our assessment data to make informed instructional decisions at every level for students. For those who are responding to our core instruction, for those who are needing extra layered intervention or specialized services. So part of what we're doing right now is making sure that we have the structures in place to do that work, specifically with the win time, what I need, and how we are grouping and working with students by layering intervention on top of their core instruction. Another big focus in Goal 2 is culturally and linguistically responsive teaching and learning. So within our social and emotional learning structures and practices, we are now layering on top very clear direction in terms of cultural responsiveness and how we validate and affirm cultures in our classrooms to make sure that we are preparing students to be successful for life, and we're building and bridging to situational appropriateness for students. That work also pairs very nicely with our equity audit. So right now we are engaging, we have an equity coalition of building and district leaders that are engaging with district management group in very detailed data review sessions, identifying areas of highest needs in terms of really looking into that data. And soon we'll be working with families and staff in terms of soliciting more qualitative data to pair with our quantitative focus groups, potentially town hall sessions, to really understand where our parents are, where our staff are, and where our students are. We also solicited quite a bit of data through our Panorama surveys last year to make sure that we were getting our student voice in terms of our culturally and linguistically responsive work ahead, as well as our teacher voice.
Thank you, Dr. Ossel. So that really segues nicely into Goal 3. And what I love is that you really see a tight cohesion in this plan and the interdependence of these goals with one another. So in Goal 3, we talk about family and community partnerships. I think, Robert, what you highlighted earlier today is a great example of work that's already in progress in building relationships, and not just one-way communication, but really building two-way communication for our families. I think that ties back into the voice that we, in goal number 2, for our students and for our families. So as we look at building those partnerships, but also ensuring that we're increasing our communication, going to where, meeting people where they are at and how we can better communicate. I will ask Ben if he wants to share a few highlights in terms of some of our communication work.
I do. Thank you for asking me. I appreciate that. That's very nice. Yes, one of the pieces that's very important, as Dr. Bresnahan mentioned, is the two-way element of communication and looking at our messaging. So I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of looking at how effective is school district communication, because a lot of times what happens is school districts have a compelling need to communicate, which is very important because we do need to communicate and frequently. But sometimes there's a disconnect between what a district is sending out and what a parent wants to receive, or a family or a community, or any of your audience group, could be a staff, whoever that may be. So looking very strategically at the messages we're sending, so our audiences are all feeling like they're heard. Because a great way to disconnect your work from an audience is to continue to send them things that they are not asking to hear about, and repeatedly sending that out. And all the while not sending out the things that they are wanting to hear about. So there is a balance between feeling like there is information we know we need to share, but also information that we know families or staff or the community want to hear. So we have to figure out what those things are and then find that right, correct balance. Because we may feel that our strategic plan is incredibly important to us, but it could be that someone says, I know that's important, but I need to hear more about what's happening in the classroom. And there's this disconnect because you keep telling me about the strategic plan. You're not telling me enough about what's happening in the classroom. And so we need to gauge what that looks like with our families. So finding vehicles and avenues to get a feedback from families to say, how is our balance? What are we sharing with you? And what are we missing? And what is hitting the mark? And then there are times where we just know that there's information we have to share because it's critical to the operation of what we're doing and that we want families to understand. And so it's fascinating to me to see how different places, different institutions handle that and sometimes mishandle that and sometimes handle that in a really effective manner. So I think we have a lot of excellent vehicles in place in our district. We've done a lot of foundation work over the last 5 to 7 years to put many pieces in place. We can send out a lot of information, text messages, emails, social media. We have all those channels in place. Now it's a matter of figuring out those messages and how they resonate with our audiences. And it really goes back to our other two elements within Goal 3 as well, which is partnerships with families and partnerships within the community. And everything we just heard connects right back to that, because we want families to feel that connection. We want families to feel like they understand what's happening and how they support their children, very similar to what was just talked about with summer learning and those pieces, as well as the community. How are we connecting with the community in a meaningful, relevant way that yields productive pieces? It isn't just we have a partnership with the community, but there's no value add to our students and what's happening in our classrooms, and that's critically important. So to me, Goal 3 is really exciting. I really like it a lot. Obviously, it's communications tied with how important that is to be effective, and that's when things get, I think, really exciting, is when you hear from people that you're listening to me and you're hearing me and you're sending things and sharing things that are important of value to me. So that's what our committee is going to be working on over the duration of the near future. So terrible ending. I just stumbled to the horrible end, but let's pretend like I didn't do that and it was all the other good stuff.
We need to work on the communication there.
I appreciate that. You know what? I think you just volunteered, which is great. Thanks, Robert. Good job.
Thank you, Ben.
You followed the script perfectly.
So I think when we're looking at Goal 3, the key words in the goal statement that really stand out to me is it talks about not just communication, but collaboration and trust. And I think when we talk about transparency from the board, I think when we talk about really being able to be out there and be a listening ear to our families, that's one of the things that's going to help build that opportunity for trust. And that goes through all our work throughout all 4 of our goals. So looking at goal number 4, stewardship of our resources, this is really, the how we're going to achieve all these things. We're going to do it by being responsible stewards of our district resources. So Dr. also already talked about the equity piece. That's a big part when we talk about when we hear equity, it's often misunderstood to just be about the culturally relevant teaching and about, language, accessibility, things like that. But it's really across all aspects of our district. Are we equitably allocating resources? Are we programming equitably? Are we considering equity when we build our transportation plans and when we build our schedules? That's the kind of data that we're currently looking at in that audit. That's really going to support our work in goal number 4. And then I'm going to ask Ross to talk a little bit about our high quality staff.
So it's very exciting to start seeing from a behind the scenes goal these connections and conversations starting to happen. In regards to hiring, I think of recruiting, development, and retaining. We are doing a tremendous job of retaining our staff. People are still looking to come to District 59 as a destination district for our programming, for our resources. Our staff do a tremendous job networking for us because they're proud of the work that we do. With that, we are continuing to strengthen our already tremendous partnerships. Those partnerships with the DEA and Cameo, they build a cohesive staff that can do tremendous things. We are, at the development side of things, We have for many, many years been leading the way in terms of our new teacher network, our mentoring program. All new teachers in their first and second year are assigned a mentor. They have additional days on their contract so that they can come in and have professional development. And that professional development changes based on the groups that we're hiring. There have been years where we've had more special education staff, more dual language staff, or there'll be a little bit of everything and we'll split some items up. So we are still continuing to try to improve that when it comes to more specific items that need support. But the recruiting piece is the part that is the most exciting. We've been doing a very nice job, but we'd like to do even better. We have some very strong partnerships to get student teachers into our districts with universities such as Illinois State, Roosevelt, National Louis, and we're strengthening and expanding those partnerships so that we can have an even more diverse pool of candidates so that we can really take a deeper dive into larger candidate pools so that we can have candidates in our staffing plan that mirror the needs of our students. The final piece that I want to mention about the wealth of our programming is I am very excited about the conversations and what I'm learning about equity in terms of an equity solution to have programs throughout the entire district. We are asking questions like, does that also create an inequity in terms of the quality of staff based on the labor shortage or the market? And so we're really asking ourselves challenging questions even for our solutions to make sure that we're maximizing the equity across all corners of our plan.
Thank you, Ross. And last but not least, when we talk about fiscal stewardship around our resources, I think the budget that the board approved tonight is a great example of fiscal stewardship. So I will ask Ron to say a few words about that.
Thank you. So when it comes to key performance indicators or KPIs, our business office is actually assigned one per person. And that's something that it's a little known. So for an example, it's developed into a SMART goal. So we have to have something that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-based. It's something I can share. I've shared it with Dr. Bresnahan. But one thing we look at is expenses per building to see what's being spent where. The budgeting process, of course. The facilities and maintenance plan. And one project that I'm really working on this year is a cost per program. So we're looking at the financial and equity audit by cost per pupil. So we can see what are we really spending on each program to see if we're doing it the right way. Another piece is we use Forecast 5 to develop our CAFR and MBA. So when you look at any sort of projections, that's where they come from. School due data is something that we're mapping out, which it's a building issue. So you submit to a school due. Now we know what the staff is looking for, what issues there are. So we do have our buildings and grounds department working on that. A new one for our team is transportation on-time delivery. To see if our routes are late or not. Every bus has GPS on it. And so I encourage my team to make sure they look and see where are the buses, what stop, why. Let's map it out to see if there are any issues. The other thing we're looking at is the number of students, routes, and stops so that we actually know, wow, that route has 50 kids and it's a 50-minute route. There's a problem. So that's something we're identifying at this time. And then the last thing we're actually doing for payroll is payroll reissuance. So I initially called it payroll errors, and payroll didn't like the way I said that. So I said, why don't we say reissuance instead? Looking at any sort of deductions, insurance, anything that has to be changed out of a paycheck. So they've been mapping this probably since the last couple months of last year into this year, and now they're going to be going full throttle into this year. I look forward to sharing the data.
Excellent. So that was, I don't know, maybe a 15, 20-minute recap of something that I think originally we had said we hit pause on due to COVID, but really there was no pause. This plan really has been in its process, but I think the work of the committee and the work of the board now is how are we going to really take this, operationalize it, and then really start to put some measurables and deliverables to it so that we know that this plan actually is working and achieving the goals as outlined. So with that, I'm going to ask the board for your input questions that you would like for the committee to take for their work on Wednesday.
Okay, so I'll start briefly. So to me, we've got these key performance indicators that are happening behind the scenes. And we're doing this at the end of the meeting, and to me, this needs to be more towards the forefront of what the board sees. So we need our board to have key performance indicators for the district, right? So we need to figure out as a board what we want to see to make sure that we're making progress in the district. And so we're always told to stay above the fray, right? Not get down into the details, but there need to be certain things that bubble up to the surface that act as indicators of progress or indicators that there's areas that need to be addressed. Where are we putting our resources and what we're focusing on? And so that to me is why the strategic plan is so important, because it's our early warning system, it's our view into the different parts of the district. And we need to come up with some quantitative measures and some qualitative measures for each of these that the board wants to see reported back to us. And it may match with ones that are happening down at the superintendent's level, but we're not supposed to get into that much detail as the board, right? That's what we're always told. So I want to try and build within each of these areas some regular reporting system that comes back to us. Not here's the school report card at the end of the year, but here's how this year is going so far. And so we can see progress through time. And they should probably change every year, right? So once you get one done, it falls off the list and you put a new one in its place, that sort of thing.
So you're talking about reporting based on the key performance indicators?
Yeah, the key performance indicators. So this is always the key performance indicators on our current strategic plan say work to be completed with stakeholder group following board approval.
When we talk like the report card, you're talking about like reporting on those key performance indicators?
Yes, reporting back to us, that needs to be a regular thing that happens. It built into the structure of board meetings, in my opinion. So part of the superintendent's reports would be, this week we're reporting on goal 1, here's some of the key performance indicators, here how they're going, that sort of thing.
Joe, yeah, I would tack on to that. I think one way to do it would be we have these like periodic updates on the strategic plan throughout the year. So it's almost like we have a 4-part dashboard, right, where we're updating on each of the pieces. And I do think ideally there would be a collaboration between the board and the SLT members to figure out, because you all are the experts more than us, to educate us about what should we be measuring, how should we be measuring it, and we can think about, does that make sense to us,
Yeah,
right? But to have sort of that high-level picture we can check in on, because I think maybe assessments is one of the obvious categories, right? It's like we see these updates and these numbers and we see growth, but like ideally what do we want to see, right? Like sort of setting that goal of what is our aspiration of what we want to see, and then we work backwards, like how are we going to measure that, what will we consider as progress, and then we can establish a working dashboard. So I think Joe and I
think it's going to involve other committees, because
Yeah.
goal 4, stewardship of resources, maybe the facilities and finance committee can say, here's some of the stuff that that should make it to the board every so often. Because right now the board meetings is often all our business stuff, but I'd like to see a regular reporting back on the strategic plan.
I think what they've been talking about is assessments, and I agree absolutely with both of you, what you have to say, and I do think that assessment is one of the things that has not been one of our star areas. So I think we have to really work on assessments at all levels and how we can all inform each other and ourselves about how we're doing. I agree with both of you.
And being careful that an assessment for the district is not the same as an assessment for individual students. It's a different standard.
But I think we have to work on it at all levels.
Right, I agree, but what needs to come to the board has to be data that we know is reliable and we know that we're measuring everyone. So for instance, last year, because of COVID, we had a large number of students who didn't do the standardized tests, right? So that data is going to be sort of, what does it mean, who knows, sort of issue. For individual students, it's useful, but when it reports back to the board as a district-wide performance, we want to make sure we get some sort of standards in there and baseline set up.
Dr. Bresnan, just to go back to your original question, do you want us also, what questions do we have for each individual SLT member to look into, or?
No, I'm looking for more that structural piece to guide Courtney and Dr. Sager that when we get into this committee work, because we've already started having those conversations. So for example, like when we talk about what will our math program look like when our new math curriculum is fully implemented. So Susan's already created goals for a 3-year plan with a measurable outcome that we will be monitoring. And so we said, as we periodically update the board, we will say, related to the strategic plan goal 1 of, clarity of curriculum, here's our plan for math and here's how we are measuring it and here's our most recent update. So I think it's more thinking structurally, what is your expectation of seeing those, key performance indicators, frequency of updates. My idea is that everything we share out is related to this and we draw that connection so that you all can see that what we're working on and what we're reporting out on is in fact connected to our strategic plan.
And the key is we set it up beforehand so that we're not just getting back, here's a number that looks good. Here's another number that looks good. Here's another number that looks good. But we agree that we want to look at these numbers throughout the year and we get them reported back to us. So I think what we're doing right now is Courtney and I are going to be doing this strategic plan committee. We're going to try and come up with all these key performance indicators. What do the other board members want to see? What's your input on that?
Because I think I want to see that growth, that year-over-year growth. So if there's a way to say, we did X, but compared to last year, here's the positive that we're seeing, or the negatives that we're seeing. Just so one, we understand that we are progressing, but also two, that all the parents and everyone in the community understands that the SLT and everybody's doing a good job. The district is doing a good job. Here's how we're doing it, to kind of show it that way.
I agree, but I also think we need to know how you are assessing, because I don't think the board or the community knows enough about how we are assessing everything.
When you talk about the key performance indicators, are you looking at a certain number of them per goal, per thing, or just kind of I'm kind of.
Well, I think that's what this discussion is, right? So do we come up with as a board, there's 4 areas and there's 3 key performance indicators we want to see this year? Or do we want to come up with a regularly updating list? I think that's more of a board decision as a group.
And I think my worry sometimes in corporate speak is always developing these KPIs just to fill lines on a paper. And maybe we just need to go and adjust as we go along. Let's get some really strong or really necessary KPIs up front. And if we see a need to develop more as we go, we develop more as we go. But I worry of saying we're going to do X number of KPIs for each group because we may not need that.
And I think you made a great point earlier. It's like, hey, if we have 7 KPIs, I'm using an example, and we reached this target on this one, and we've taken it off the list. I mean, I think that's a good idea, but I also think we still want to keep monitoring that because we've identified as a key thing. We've identified as a key something we wanted to evaluate. And
so maybe there's a difference between some that are a focus for a particular year.
We have for this year we're going to. I mean, we come up with
I
kind
think
of
some of this comes down to the superintendent's level where you have a certain focus for a year, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think, but this is a very collaborative process. I don't think the strategic plan lies solely on the responsibility of the board. So I think part of what our hope in our first committee is so that you can see what are the things that we're already measuring and monitoring and working towards, so that those are going to be easy data points that we can throw in and say, that's going to show us if we're achieving curriculum clarity. And I think because overall you want to be able to say at the end of this plan, have we achieved our goals? And I think that's the discussion that you'll have in conjunction with SLT so that we know, okay, where are our gaps? Where are the things that we need to monitor and measure in a different way? And what are the things that already exist that are going to demonstrate growth in that area or attainment of that goal? And so I think for the purpose of this discussion, it's really giving us enough feedback so that when we get to the committee and we start to put together a structure, then that'll come back and we'll take it to the committee of the whole and start to digest it and collaborate and really come up with a system that the board then says, yes, this is how we're going to fulfill the intent of the plan, and then these are our expectations for the administration so that we could come back and monitor our
I
growth.
think Randy's point is these goals are something that you never complete the goal, right? But there may be certain focus areas that will over time.
Almost like a prioritization.
Yeah.
You know, we set a goal, it's our goal, hey, we reached this goal, well, you know, you can always do better.
Right.
Yeah.
Improve the
So-
math
Yeah.
curriculum, right?
And then so we keep that goal, but maybe it's not a higher priority, you know,
But
to
there
work
should
on that.
still
but we
be a
pri-
monitoring goal.
Yeah.
that
Yeah, we'll
goes
still
along-
monitor,
right,
but we
monitor.
prioritize, hey, you know, we've achieved this goal, okay,
Yeah.
what's our next goal, what's our next priority?
And they should be challenging goals. I mean, no district does things perfectly. Like, I'll use Ben as an example. It shouldn't be send 10 emails a month, you know, and we cross it off the list, you know. But they should be tough and challenging, and we really need to assess it that way.
I think our curriculum has been in such disarray for so many years that that's my biggest thing that I'm looking for is what we finally came up with, having the impact that we want to bring this district back to where it was, where these kids are succeeding and they're going out prepared like they should be, like they used to be.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of kind of relates to what Randy said. Our goal, our maybe short-term goal is curriculum clarity, adapting curriculum, getting it involved, and then we have to monitor it from there.
I think that's what they're going to be doing with the
Right, but as far as
constant
goals go,
updates,
right,
yeah.
we may say, well, we've implemented this math curriculum. Are we seeing improvement? But the implementation would be a goal that would fall off the priority list, and maybe now it's science is our implementation goal.
Perhaps it's not so much the monitoring of the goals, but the monitoring of what we are doing in order to reach the goals. As you mentioned, the curriculum, definitely we have to work on that because that's how we're going to reach our goals.
So I think would be helpful, and I don't expect everyone will have it at the top of their mind tonight, but I think one piece of this is the structure, right? And then one piece is the priorities. And so Patty was raising curriculum's a high priority. I feel the same way. I also feel assessment is a high priority. In the fiscal resources place, I feel like we're really privileged in this district to be on good footing, but I'd like to improve our monitoring and communication because I feel like with things like the bond issuance, we don't want to surprise the public, even if, you know, there's all kinds of internal mechanisms that are monitoring that already. We also want to be mindful of, are we surprising people? So I think on each of these, whether you share it tonight or whether you send emails to Joe and I, just thinking for yourself about what are my priorities on that list. Like we're meeting in the afternoon on Wednesday. And again, we'll also have a committee of the whole conversation, but it'd be great to get some of your feedback on those priorities. And then if you have ideas about the structure, I mean, I will just say that I haven't gotten out of my mind a comment by Chris Garlevich, who was a board member last year, of saying, I really want to see a high-level dashboard at every meeting that at a glance gives me a sense of how we're moving toward the strategic plan. To be totally transparent, I loved that idea, but I did not have any clue what that would look like, right? And I do see that as maybe Dr. Bresnahan and Joe and my work is to try to figure out with everyone's help, like what could that look like, so that we're constantly keeping these things in mind as we move forward.
With the building committee, that they have this running list, the big list, and you look at what's the priorities and what gets done. Is that kind of what you're?
You mean in terms of the dashboard or in terms, so I see the dashboard a little more high level than that. Like what you're talking about would be the background to the dashboard, but I might want to see on the dashboard that we are, you know, I'm throwing out a couple examples. I might want to see like our fund balance on the dashboard, right? I think it's a higher level.
It would be more complex, it definitely would be.
And then
but
there
I'm
would
just
be
trying
layers
think
to
of-
back it up
Yeah,
underneath.
okay.
So I think something like a punch list or like I think of that as supporting the dashboard. And who knows, maybe it even has links that like
Okay.
get you to that level of granularity. But I mean, this is just my thought. What are others thinking
Because
about
I think
that?
it's true, because a lot of times we make decisions here, and we get numbers thrown at us, and we'll use Ron as an example. Like, you know, if we're talking about numbers or we're talking about budgets, and the only frame of reference we have for most of us is what's on the screen in front of us, and not necessarily we're doing a 30% jump in cost versus what we did last year, and not knowing that, so we're not able to ask those types of questions. So I think kind of going on the dashboard piece of just kind of, you know, like Courtney's saying, at a very high level, we don't need all that detail unless we really need it, but just so we can make the best possible decisions for the district.
To kind of go back to your dashboard idea, I don't know, I kind of like to see, you know, almost like percentage of completion, or possibly a red, green, you know, yellow kind of thing too. You know, kind of like, hey, we haven't started this redwood, we haven't started yellow in progress. We can have different hues of it as well too. You know, as we move along, almost like a bar chart, kind of like a bar thing or something.
Yeah.
Just kind of show you how we're progressing towards something like that. I think would be something. And then you said you see something. Hey, we can click down on it with an update of where we're at with what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I kind of would like to see.
Yeah, because
something.
even if it went that route, yellows are okay, because sometimes you find out that there's things you didn't identify at the top, and now you got to do a little digging and more homework, and that's fine.
Yeah, there's
Sometimes I'm a little more worried when everything's green and we get a picture and everything's fine, because we know there's something under there too.
So you are all very advanced students, so, and asking all the great questions and great ideas. So that's actually something I shared from my previous work with the SLT team, was actually how we reported out using red, yellow, green, or yellow, orange, green, kind of from exploration to implementation with monitoring, and being able to report out on that regularly to the board with all of our objectives. And it allowed us to prioritize what foundationally had to happen first in order to get to year 2, year 3, or 4 of this plan to really get closer towards our goal. So I'm going to share that when we get to our committee. So I think if, for the purpose of tonight, I think we accomplished our goal of having input, so that when we go to the committee, we'll know what more we need to ask, get some ideas and thoughts around putting structure to this, and then being able to be really prepared for our committee of the whole conversation. Okay? So thank you all so much. That was a great conversation. I appreciate it. Just a couple more things under this section that I want to just highlight for the board. We are going to be sharing our dashboard, and okay, thank you. I'm going to grab that really quick. Did you send it in my email? Okay. If you would, that would be great, so I don't have to go through my email. I'd appreciate that. While Mr. Ludloff is pulling that dashboard up, again, this is just a piece of our transparency. We have had a school open, and we're about to have all of our schools open on Wednesday. We want to make sure that we're reporting out our health metrics that we are committed to for opening schools. I need to disconnect first. Will do. The other piece I wanted to have a conversation real quick. I spoke to Randy before the meeting started, just to get some clarity around our committee meetings, because technically if we have more than 2 board members present and actively participating, it becomes an open meeting. And so I wanted to engage the board in a conversation of, do we want to have all committee meetings, anticipate them in, to be open meetings? Or do we want to maintain them more as committee meetings with board representation, so that our committee of the wholes and our discussion with the full board then becomes the open meeting? So I just thought I would throw that out there. I have worked with one, format in the past, but I'm open to conversation with the board on how you would like us to move forward.
Would you share the format that you worked with and your point of view on it, or do you want to reserve that?
Well, I guess I'm used to committees being more board representation and other parent or community participation, staff participation. When it becomes an open meeting, I think it takes on a different tone and tenor. And then once you have 3, at that point, I'm almost like, may as well have all 7 if we're really going to discuss things. I think we've already established some of the board committees, such as finance and facilities, and we know we have 3. We post it. It is public. But when I'm thinking about the strategic planning, which is a superintendent's committee, I think that takes on a little different flavor. And obviously, we all have a lot of opinions that need to be really heard. And so I'd rather save full, robust board conversations when the full board is present. So that would be my personal take on it from my seat. But again, I serve the will of the board.
Yeah,
So
my personal take is that the committees should remain as committees, that the staff and that the parents that participate, then the board are in the order of importance, because then I think it does become a different structure, and things take a different tone, or the board members end up taking up most of the microphone, and the parents and the staff don't get to talk. But that's just my 2 cents.
My personal opinion is that having not been on the finance committee when it first started out, I didn't really know as much as I wanted to know because I wasn't getting the information. Now I'm on it and I'm much happier, and there are 3 of us on it. And I don't see anything wrong with the 3 people being on the finance committee.
And I feel the same for curriculum. To me, finance and curriculum are 2 major, like, everything we talk about goes through that, right? Our teaching the students and stewardship of the district. So to me, those 2 committees are somewhat different in that there's bound to be a lot more interest in them. And so,
Well, our communications committee has had 3 people on it, although from the very beginning, we've had 3 board members on it. And I don't think that's hurt anything at all. So I don't think that hurts to have 3 people. And it's an open meeting anyway, as long as you're having community people on the committee. I think I learn a lot by being in a committee before than I do at the board meeting. So I prefer it.
yeah.
And I totally agree with that point, Mardell. I think it's that all board members would find value in that. So actually, in my previous district, we would run our finance committees or our facility committees right immediately preceding our board meetings, so that they would, the full board would be present, because otherwise you are having to repeat or what have you. So it's just a different structure. I'm totally happy to run it as we want. I think the other piece is that when we run these board meetings and now our committee of the wholes, we're broadcasting it, our public's watching it, it's archived. When we're running them as committee meetings that are still open meetings, we're not following that same procedure. So that gets a little bit complicated. Just something for the board to think about. And as you look, we have quite a few number of committees, and to run them all as open meetings, I think I'd like to just get more clarity on the purpose and function when they are an open meeting versus just a committee meeting. So maybe something to think about and come back to
And
next time. I'm
is-
totally fine with that.
So is it possible for 3 board members to be there, but only 2 are on the committee and 1 is sort of just watching, listening?
Absolutely, but that third board member would then have to act as an
audience
audience and not an
member,
active
right.
participant.
Yeah.
That would be the,
The downside of that.
yes.
I think kind of why we went to this original committee layout or philosophy was previously they were having 2 board meetings a month. And all the work was being done in board meetings, and the meetings were going till late at night. And by going to this, by going more to a committee thing, we were able to go down to 1 board meeting a month with the addition of the, committee of the wholes. And then we were able to, limit the amount of time where actually as a board meeting as a group together. So that was one of the reasons why I went to these committees. And part of the reason I went to committees was to allow the community to be part of these communications. Because as a board meeting, they're only allowed to speak to us in public session. We're not able to respond to them, we're not able to ask us questions, we're not able to answer their questions. So that's one thing we need to consider. I understand where Dr. Bresnan is coming from. I really truly think that there are some committees that I think should be, open to the public, whether it be, facility and finance. I think we have 3 board members on there. We're legally required to have an open meeting related to that, and I'm fine with that. I think, but like there's a transportation committee. I don't know if we need that to be a committee that's open to the public agenda for the public. So I think I think it's I'm kind of leaning towards a hybrid
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah,
that.
and that makes sense, because even you know, last year, Dr. Russell, like on our behavior intervention committee, the board members on that committee aren't necessary. I mean, we're necessary there, but the discussion is amongst the staff about the issues that they see, and we're just there kind of listening. So there are, not saying that one is more important than the other, but going on Randy's point, you know, open meetings do make more sense on some of the committee types.
And I guess just to clarify for any parents or staff who might be watching and aren't as familiar with the protocols on this, when we call it an open meeting, that means that it is an open meeting under the Open Meetings Act, triggering certain obligations like posting an agenda. But these other committees still might invite the public, even though they're not an open meeting under the Open Meetings Act. So it sounds like the consensus, at least of some of us, is that we do want to have this hybrid model where we're going to say, you know, maybe facilities, finance, and curriculum. We will post these as Open Meetings Act. Public is welcome. We'll follow the heightened protocols associated with that for these select ones. But really, for these other ones that have 2 or less board members, we will not follow the protocols for these. And I do think, I mean, I guess if I were to express a rationale for videotaping something like this meeting versus an open meeting of the facilities committee, I think the rationale is that a quorum of the board is not present, right? It's not, they can't vote on any. There can't be a vote by the board. Like in reality, in those committee meetings, no official action can be taken.
That's true.
It's a conversation that brings a recommendation to the board, and any official action would be taped and viewable by the public. And if anybody wants to attend, they have the option of attending in person. I think they probably also have the option, and you all can tell me if I'm right, of requesting like meeting minutes to be shared if they want. If for some reason they're afraid to attend because of COVID or whatever reason they can't attend, they could still request meeting minutes and receive those. So I don't know if others feel similarly, but doing that hybrid split.
I feel that the hybrid makes sense, and how do you determine which meetings are open meeting versus the other kind? And I think it's just down to interest, and the fact that some committees have 3 board members interested in being there shows those are the ones that people are going to be interested in.
Well,
so I think that's a reasonable way to make the distinction.
Well, we have the roster, we have the sign-up sheet. How many of those are 3? Maybe we just circulate it in the next weekly update or whatever it is, that these 4 have 3, and the 3 that are on there can assess whether or not they want to stay on it or they don't, and then maybe there's only 2 that have 3, or maybe 1 has 3.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the clarity and being able to differentiate and establish, okay, this is an open meeting, but it's an open committee meeting. This is how it's going to be run. All of those committee meetings minutes are provided for our board and for the public. So I think that would be very helpful, because I know it was a little overwhelming seeing that big list and making sure that we had agendas and posting and all of that, as well as accessibility. So we will definitely review that list, bring it back, look. I think right now we maybe only have 1 or 2 that have 3 board members on it. So we'll look at that, and that is how maybe we'll get clarity moving forward as to which will be open board committee meetings versus a public committee meeting. Perfect, thank you. That is very helpful for me. I appreciate it, and hopefully for our SLT team as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lula for our dashboard update.
Yes, just really quick, this is the current totals for the district. We began back, we're always collecting this data. We just put it into this format. So we've had 3 student cases and 3 staff cases over basically the last 3 weeks. Just to highlight those close contacts, it's listed as 15. We split that 7 and 8. 7 of those are school related. 8 are related to an out of school kids club group that's housed in our schools. So we just wanted to highlight that piece. And the one staff one back in early July wasn't related to school, but that person couldn't start work because they were quarantined.
The only suggestion I would say, Tom, is when you say district totals to date, I would put a date in there saying
Add the date.
a state as of this date, 'Cause I mean, this could, people could say, well, this is going way back to March of last year.
Yeah, no,
So-
that's
I don't want to create a confusion. I'd say, effective of, starting as of this date.
yeah, we could
and when you-
definitely do that.
When you
piece.
put that split in there, 7/8, 7 of those are in our school, the 8 are added on top of the 7. Is that the way you're expressing that? But that doesn't mean that those 7 wouldn't have been close contacts in the other program. I don't know that we're splitting it out in a way that gives information. So you've got 7/8, 15 total, right?
So
7
there-
of those were in school.
We're connected to in-school close contact. The 8 were connected to out of school, but connected to a daycare program
But this-
associated with the school.
But the 7 wouldn't have also been in the other group?
No, there is overlap. I think the
That's what I'm
key,
asking.
yes, there is overlap. I think the key in identification is that where the close contact was traced. I think prioritizing which ones happened in, and then differentiating those that happened outside is the key factor. But
Yeah.
you're right. It could
Because it's not
happen in
showing- It's not
multiple.
really showing the effect of each close contact
Correct.
situation. in
Yeah,
my
ultimately,
Correct.
we're owning all 15 of those.
opinion.
close
Right, ultimately, there are
contacts.
students.
Yeah,
yes,
there are
but
students and the
I
impact.
don't think this is reflecting accurately the effect of those 2 issues.
Yes,
Let me just say it that way.
yes, I
Yeah.
understand, and I think maybe we look at how this is gonna go moving forward, because there are times when students or staff will have close contact outside of school.
Right.
Right.
For a variety, in a variety of settings, and it wasn't an in-school piece.
Right.
So being able to, maybe we could look at how we
Yeah,
update
absolutely.
our dashboard and work on that for next
Yeah,
time.
I-
That's a
I-
good point.
I think the goal is to provide the board with some overall totals on a periodic basis during the course of the year. And the other piece related to that August 2nd through 8th, that data could change.
Right.
This just, really, a lot of this just came together late last week, so just to highlight that.
Okay, if there are no further questions, that is the end of the superintendent reports.
So since we've already entered closed session, should we make a motion to adjourn?
Well, the one thing we didn't do, and I know you mentioned it, and I've been thinking about it, is we need to reconvene from closed session. We never really did reconvene from closed session. We never took a roll call. We never took official roll call.
Exactly.
Should we start over with Ms. Savage and start from the top?
Start over. So we never recorded a roll call on that, right? We did the motion and everything, yeah.
We did the motion return, but then we opened the door and we came back in here, and that's when we're supposed to do the roll call to reconvene. We did not do that. We went right to Mrs. Savage's presentation.
We have to have a motion to adjourn. You can't,
Well, we have to
No, we need to record our votes on the reconvene first,
reconvene from closed session.
just because we never wrote it
Shall we
down.
quickly do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Hang on.
Another mic, well, please.
Espino,
aye.
Lang,
Present.
Mencia,
Present?
Petrielli present, Reed,
Present.
Sager,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Present.
and the motion passes.
Okay, now we can, motion to adjourn.
Now I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You have to actually read it.
I have to read it?
Yes.
What, do I have to do the time and everything?
8:29.
Be it resolved on the 9th day of August 2021, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education meeting is adjourned.
I second it.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Sager,
Aye.
Schumacher,